This is Sri Lanka, an island in the Indian Ocean with a rich and varied landscape. But like most of our planet, this natural heritage is under threat. Certainly, the climate change that we will all experience will also have a dramatic effect on this island. Sri Lanka is made up of 3 major climatic zones. In the north, the dry zone, in the centre, the so-called intermediate zone, and in the southwest, the wet zone. Professor Munasinghe believes that the dry and intermediate zones will be the most affected by global warming. For years, this brilliant Sri Lankan scientist has been studying the impact that climate change will have on his country, for an international project funded with the help of the EU. He thinks the dry zone is the most threatened. It's a region where water has always been a rare but vital resource.
The civilization of Sri Lanka is about 3,000 years old, and it started here in the dry zone, and it is built on water and agriculture. And all the ancient society depended on capture of water in reservoirs, irrigation of fields, and so on.
These reservoirs, large artificial lakes, still exist today. They continue to be used for agriculture and even to produce hydroelectric power. But Leila and her family have no electricity. Neither do they have a reservoir close to their small plantation. They therefore had to find a solution to be able to continue to grow crops and so survive in this dry region.
වගාලින් කපනවා. ලැස්සාවොත් ඉතින් වැහි ජලය ලබා ගන්නවා. නැත්තම් වගාලින් මාර්ගයෙන් තමයි මහවැලි වතුරක් මොකුත් නැහැ නේ මෙහාට. වගාලින් මාර්ගයෙන් තමයි ජලය ලබා ගන්න.
An expensive solution and one which also pollutes. But the situation is not always easy for these poor farmers, and it will likely become much worse with the droughts expected in the coming years.
Sri Lanka will be badly affected, and our calculations, which we have done, show that in the dry zone, agricultural production can fall about 15 to 20% within the next 30 years. This is a tremendous pressure for poor farmers who live in this area.
In Sri Lanka, as elsewhere in the world, poor people are the main victims of climate change, droughts as well as storms. Governments must take account of climate change in their development policy. To help propagate this idea, Professor Munasinghe created MIND, the Munasinghe Institute for Development.
In Sri Lanka, we study and analyze the problems. What are the impacts of climate change on agriculture, on energy, and so on? We educate the public. We educate the policymakers through training programs, and then we try to help them to develop these new policies that will allow us to adapt to climate change in the future and have a development policy that is fully integrated with the climate change.
The Institute works on both a local and world level. Professor Munasinghe's expertise is often called upon at international conferences. MIND is also involved in the C3D, or Climate Change Capacity Development Project. This United Nations programme, supported by the European Union, has initiated collaboration between research centres on several continents.
The European support is important, first of course, for the funding, but also it is important because we get technical advice, we have exchange of information. So what the latest research that is going on in Europe comes to us, and what the analysis we do here is useful and interesting for the Europeans.
Climate change is a world problem and a major challenge for our future. The industrialised nations are mainly responsible for global warming, but it is the developing countries which will be its first victims. That is why these countries need support to help them develop further measures to adapt to global climate change.